WLRN Video presents.
Welcome to this WLRN interview segment with British cartoonist Stella Perrett. Stella is a cartoonist and book illustrator from Bristol, England. For 40 years, she quietly illustrated self-publishing authors' books and small magazines, held her own one-woman shows, and gave occasional talks on cartooning. Her cancellation in February 2020 by the communist newspaper The Morning Star propelled her into the gender-critical world. Her cartoon, Endgame, was vilified on Twitter, her reputation trashed, and the paper was threatened with defunding. In July, WLRN published her Right to Reply that you can see under our Guest Contributors tab on our WLRN WordPress site. Stella is now using her new freedom from conformity to support other campaigners and speak out herself. She has published her own cartoon review of the year 2020 with plenty of GC content and reviews from Jennifer Billick and Joe Bartosh. Jennifer Billick is an artist, an environmental activist, and cutting-edge feminist who runs the 11thhourblog.com. And she says about Stella, "If our cartoonists go down with our journalists, both under threat, we will have no means to fight. Stella's work goes where people are terrified to tread, providing levity while making us laugh out loud. I raise my glass." And Joe Bartosh, writer, feminist campaigner, and recovering Marxist, who is director of clickoff.org, says this about Stella's work. "Brave and brilliant, this cartoon collection is satire at its finest. No one is spared from Perrett's insightful take on politics and power. Recommended antidote to the woke world of isms and perpetual offense." So, with no further ado, please enjoy my interview with political cartoonist from the UK, Stella Perrett, recorded on December 15th, 2020. Okay, so welcome to WLRN. Thank you so much for being on the show with me today, Stella.
Thank you for having me. I've got to show you my turf badge. I don't know if you might be able to see that. Maybe you can zoom in when it's edited. It says "Truth Exposing Radical Feminists."
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Turf, yeah. My turf badge.
Yeah, I feel like that acronym has been switched up so many times by us, you know, to say something else. Like, I've heard it be totally excellent radical feminist before, too.
Yeah.
That's you. That's me. Yep.
That's right. I thought I would wear it just for my interview with WLRN.
Turf Radio. Cool.
That's it.
So tell us about yourself and your career as a political cartoonist. What got you interested in political cartooning?
Well, fell into it by accident, really, Thistle, because I've been a book illustrator most of my life. So I've been an artist and an illustrator for 40 odd years. I've always done cartoons for things like people's birthday cards and all kinds of things like that, posters, advertising for people. But I hadn't done political cartooning until I got involved with the Morning Star in Britain, which was in 2015. And I rapidly became, well, they called me their star cartoonist in print. I was with them probably every week. They printed another of my cartoons. So over the 5 years, I must have sent them hundreds of cartoons. And they're a very left-wing paper. They are actually the mouthpiece of the Communist Party in Britain. They are not a regular newspaper. They are an actual, if you like, all their editorials are the actual. Whenever the Communist Party has got something to say, it goes in the editorial of the Morning Star. Do you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they're not what you'd call a regular newspaper, and they have a circulation quite small, about 20,000. And I was quite happy with them, you know, just happily drawing the sort of subjects they like you to draw? Or is it anti-monarchy, having a go at the police, having a go at austerity, the gig economy, all the subjects that they write about, you know?
Typical left wing.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely right. And I've got a background in left wing activism anyway. I was very involved in my local area with the Liberals, going back years and years and years. And I've stood as a local candidate myself more than once.
And I think that's a really interesting point to bring out, because often when we are accused of hateful bigotry, we're also accused of aligning ourselves with the right wing and, religious fundamentalist Christians. And I have never met, well, I guess I've met some radical feminists who've come from that background, but they reject it, but more not, a lot of radical feminist activists, it seems like, come from a leftist activism background. So it's really important to point that out.
Well, I don't want to speak against religious people here, because like a lot of people, I was brought up going to Sunday school in the Church of England, and I've got a lot of sympathy. I mean, I was actually told at school in religious education that Jesus was the first communist. That's how we were taught about Jesus, He threw the moneylenders out of the temple, blah, blah, blah. So, religion has got a lot to say about the poor and the oppressed. I would not want to put anybody down because they came from a religious background.
Sure.
And look at the Jews and the Muslims, they make a big thing of philanthropy and, giving to the poor and in the community. So religion is important for a lot of people. And, but yes, we're always accused of taking money from right-wing groups and so on, aren't we?
Yeah.
I'd love to know who these people are. I'd hold my hat out to them. Can some of it come my way, please?
Yeah, no doubt. So you published a cartoon in the Morning Star.
I did.
A little over a year ago, was that? Or was it it was last year, right? I mean, it was this year in 2020. It was called Endgame. And
yeah, you might be able to see it behind my head here. Oh, let me lean that way. There it is. And it's yes, this is the cartoon that caused a load of trouble, because it's reversed here. I'm not sure which side it's on. Yeah, it's on that side behind me. And a lot of people have seen it now, because it was just people on Twitter, just there was just tons of abuse on Twitter directed at me in the newspaper because of this cartoon.
Can you describe it for our listeners that might not be able to see it right now? What was it about the cartoon that was so controversial and got it targeted?
Well, it was a specific subject that I was doing a cartoon about. It was the planned reforms of the GRA Act in Britain, which is the Gender Recognition Act, 2004. For about 3 or 4 years, trans activists had been campaigning to get this reform to make it a lot easier for them to get their certificates to say they had transitioned, you see. And women's groups were very obviously against this, and it was spoken about in Parliament. There was meetings all over the place. I hadn't really been taking any notice because I was concentrating on the things the Morning Star always wrote about. the very like nuts and bolts union activity, that sort of thing, you see. And all this was going on. It was in the newspapers occasionally. And all of a sudden, I 1 week, it became a really hot topic. Everybody was talking about it. It was in the news. So I drew a cartoon about it because that's what I did. I saw hot topics in the news and did cartoons about them. That was it. That was what I did as a cartoonist. And it was, and so this was about women's safe spaces and the possibility of, if they make it that much easier for men to declare themselves women, there's the possibility of predatory males coming into women's spaces, which we all know there's lots of evidence for. And it's a very real fear for women and girls, mothers with teenage children, for example. And I think I put a lot of emotion into the cartoon. Emotion I felt when I was a teenager, male bullying, sexist bullying. And I think people reacted to the emotion that was in the cartoon. So it shows a crocodile or an alligator coming into a little pond, and there's some little newts with their heads sticking out of the pond. So it's a literal women's space, a women's swimming session, which there are women only swimming sessions at youth sports centres and things. You probably have them there as well. Especially for pregnant women, you often get the women's only swimming session. So it's a literal safe space. And the newts are saying, you can't come in here, it's our safe space. And he's saying, don't worry your pretty little heads, I'm transitioning as a newt. So it's a very simple cartoon, very basic, about that one issue, that one possibility. And it created an absolute furor over here. The trade unions threatened the Morning Star with closure because the Morning Star relies on trade union money. Sad to say, a women's group, Women's Place UK, which is very highly thought of, joined in and thought, yeah, this is great, the Morning Star. So they were forced to cancel me and to apologize, make a public apology for publishing the cartoon. Which, looking back on it now, I know for a fact that the editor and the journalists are quite ashamed, really, that they had to succumb to that. But they had no choice. They were threatened with closure. And so I don't blame them. And in my book that I've just published, I actually say in the thank you page, I've named them at the top of the page, and I said, thank you, and I know it wasn't your fault. Because I know it wasn't. So, the cartoon, a lot of people are calling it the crocodile cartoon. Its real name is Endgame, because I told the Morning Star I consider this whole situation to be the endgame for feminism. If women don't win this battle, feminism is practically over. And Megan Murphy has made that very clear. She said on her video that the trans cult, or the trans ideology, is the most successful backlash against feminism in modern times. You know, we are living through historical times here. Now, I didn't even know all this when I drew the cartoon. To me, it was, I write the cartoon, bang it off, let's get thinking about next week's cartoon. You see, once it's gone to them, it's gone to them. And I didn't even know whether they were going to use it or not. And I didn't know what had happened. I don't even read the paper myself every day. You know, and a union colleague came up to me at work and said, oh, a cartoon of yours has caused a massive stink at the Morning Star. I knew nothing about it.
Wow.
They didn't tell me they were cancelling me. I had no communication from them at all. And I had to find out by going on the internet, and people started contacting me and saying, oh, Stella, your name's all over the internet.
Wow.
Yeah, because I'm not on Twitter or anything like that, you see.
So,
and the worst thing about it was, Thistle, the worst thing about it was that it impacted friends of mine and colleagues of mine who were on Twitter, because if they were associated with me, people started abusing them as well.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just directed at me in the newspaper, it was anybody who was associated.
Yeah, sounds like leftist McCarthyism. Sometimes I've heard it called trans activism, this type of cancel culture associated with trans activism. You're guilty, and then guilty by association as well. It's so it's so absolute way that it cancels. Now, what exactly happened? You lost your job entirely? Like you no longer?
But, yes, I don't have. They are not allowed to touch me with a barge pole, although they have talked to me privately, and they've apologised privately. I'm sort of making that public now. I'm saying this, but yeah, I don't think it's much of a secret that the staff at the paper was split down the middle over it. You know, that's not a secret, really. My biggest problem with it was that it could have dragged my union colleagues at work into it, because my union threatened to throw me out because of this scandal. The actual national union, their LGBT champion, agitated to have me thrown out. And my local union branch offered to defend me, and I said no. I said no, because I don't want you people being dragged into it. Because they would have been attacked, you see, as well. If they were on social media, they would have been attacked as well. So it forced
union membership.
Yeah, I had to resign the union.
Wow.
rather than drag my colleagues into it, you see. And also I was planning to retire early anyway, because I'm a carer for my husband. And so all this happened at a very traumatic time for us.
Yeah.
Because I'm his carer, and I was planning to reduce my hours at work anyway, and this forced me to retire early anyway. So it was quite a traumatic time, and I didn't have anybody. I wasn't on social media. I didn't have any support at all. I had to look around for support.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a thing that's been newly set up in Britain, called the Free Speech Union, which sticks up for people who are in this sort of situation.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Newly formed group?
Yes, they formed end of last year. They formed, yeah.
In part in response to what's
the cancel culture, yeah.
Interesting. Are there I guess your book deals with other situations besides gender critical people being canceled.
Yes.
It's a widespread problem in our society. It seems like that's really been exaggerated because of social media and how easy it is to ostracize somebody these days,
Well, absolutely. There's a short list of subjects that a lot of people in social media cannot touch with about you can't you can't talk about Islamism, you can't talk about racism. There's lots of things you can't talk about, isn't there?
Where is it in society that we actually have real freedom of expression and real discussions and dialogue and discourse? Where is that happening currently in our society, this global world with all this social media?
Well, you've got me. I mean, I've joined Spinster, and Spinster I find... Spinster, yeah, let's give a big shout out to Spinster. To me, that feels like a safe space, and in the course of the year, I've had massive support on Spinster. It's great. I've made friends through it. I've got friends in America that I didn't even know existed in the world, people I'd never heard of before, And I've got to know people like Jennifer Billick, Joe Bartosh. You probably know these names.
I do. And that you're engaged in productive and high-level conversation and dialogue with them. It's not like, we all agree on everything all the time, but we agree that there needs to be a safe space, a public square where things can be discussed openly.
Yeah. The other person in Britain who's I would like to big up really is people call her Posy Parker, real name Kelly J. Keane, who you might have heard of as well. And I've been to a couple of her events and hope to go to more when all our lockdowns and things are finished. Because, that to me, that is very, very important activism. She said more than once, we're trying to take back the public square.
Yeah.
We've been locked out of the public square, and we need to get back into it.
Totally. And how sexist, right? I mean, and that gets to something later on in the interview. I wanted to read that Renee Gerlich quote and have you respond to it. But it's like, this is happening to women. Women are being forced out of the public square and back into the home, basically, which is such a regressive politics,
Well, this is it. I think we're doing better at fighting back against it here in the UK than perhaps Canada and America. I think you're a bit behind us on this, to be honest. Whether that's because I've got my own theory about why that is. I think it's because we haven't been invaded for over 1,000 years, and we've got this Bolshevik attitude. Nobody's going to come and tell us what to do. I think the Brits have got that attitude, and we know what. And a lot of our politicians, especially male politicians, they've been to these public schools where they experienced a lot of bullying as children, as teenagers. Mm-hmm. And I think, honestly, they do recognise what bullying is, perhaps more than in other parts of the world, because of that background, and that's why we've been able to. I mean, the UK government has doubled down on the Equality Act and the protection for women, and we've just had this amazing court case, the Tavistock case, which you guys have heard of. You know, and we've had some wins in the Scottish Parliament where people are trying to push through hate laws and so on. So women are really, really active on this issue here. Whereas when I look on Spinster and I see the American women talking, it's like they're afraid to speak out in their normal lives.
Right. I would have to agree with you. It's the trans activists over here are brutal. I don't know if you saw footage from the talk at the public library in Seattle in February, but whoa, those guys are really aggressive, you know?
Yes, that's right.
And yeah, it's a whole different world over here. And I am inspired by British feminism and feminist activism, but I also understand that the atmosphere is really different over here, and it's harder for us in many ways to get organized. But thank you for being a model for other activists across the world, because every country, it seems like, is dealing with these gender identity laws, and the culture of gender identity. Transgenderism has just spread like a plague across the world, you know, and so we need to swap stories and learn from one another. I mean, the Speaker's Corner history in the UK is such a wonderful example of a society, a country, being able to create that space for people to have those heated debates and conversations about the politics of the day that we don't have anything like that over here, really. So
well, when all these restrictions are over, that's what you need to start doing, isn't it? You know, just creating them in your...
I think we'll do it in the public libraries over here. I think that's going to be the... but that's going to be post-COVID, obviously.
Well, obviously my field, Thistle, is political cartooning and art, and there aren't many women political cartoonists around. And even the male cartoonists are afraid to touch a lot of these subjects. I have just got my hands on the anthology, which is called Britain's Best Political Cartoons 2020. I was going to be in it, but Random House lawyers refused the editor permission to get me in it because of the controversy. And this is Random House again, where they had they were all crying because they didn't want to be involved in some book, you know. And so that was another cancellation I had this year. I'll tell you another cancellation I had. LGB Alliance, who I'm a big fan of, I'm a big supporter. They could not promote my book on their website because they're applying for charity status, and I'm too controversial. And if they have me involved, they said, look, we really want to, but we can't because of the controversy around me and my cartoons. So I'm too controversial for the LGB Alliance, look.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that, actually. And
this is cartoons. We're talking about cartoons, which are a means of getting a message across to people who may not speak English very well. If you live in a different country and you don't speak the language, but you might understand a cartoon that's in the newspaper, that's where cartoons have got a lot of power. You see, and that's what I think a lot of people are frightened of cartoons. They don't like them. The New York Times actually in 2019 does not print any political cartoons in its international editions, and said they never would again after some controversy about an anti-Semite cartoon, which wasn't even anti-Semitic, wasn't even done by one of their own cartoonists. And I actually addressed that in my book. I've got a whole section in the book called The Cancelled Cartoonist Club, where I talk about cartoonists from other countries and what happened to them.
So the art of political cartooning itself is somewhat under attack, because
it is, and so is satire in general. So is so are comedians in general. You know, if they step out of line or they don't toe the leftist line, well, they don't get hired. You know, it's very difficult for anybody in the field of comedy or satire.
Mm-hmm.
You are listening to WLRN.
So talk about your book a little bit. It's called 2020, the year we were all canceled.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And you highlight your case, but you also highlight other cases. Can you talk about some of those cases that you highlight and how you chose to highlight them?
Yeah, one that came along in August, so it was a bit late, but I managed to squeeze it into my book, was Emad Hajjaj, who's in Jordan. And he has still got a prison sentence hanging over his head because he doesn't know if they're going to pursue it or not. He was arrested and thrown in jail, and it was only because of concerted international effort, protest to Jordan, that he was released again. But he could get a 2-year sentence purely for publishing a cartoon. It wasn't even in a newspaper. It was on his own social media, his own Facebook. And all it was doing was satirizing the peace deal between the United Arab Emirates and Israel. That was what it was about. And Jordan is an ally of the United Arab Emirates. So the charge that they arrested him on was offending a friendly country. That was it. That was the charge. Now, obviously, it's a militaristic it's a kingdom, so it's a military dictatorship practically. We'd like to think that sort of thing doesn't happen here, but look at the women who were arrested in Leeds when Posey Parker went up there, the group of women, to talk, have a little protest in Leeds about the managed prostitution area. The police quickly closed that down and arrested them. So we're not actually far away from what goes on in other countries. We'd like to think we are, but you know, it's starting here already.
Yeah.
No, obviously, I haven't been thrown in jail for my cartoons, but I have been, you know, had masses of abuse on social media. Luckily, it didn't affect me because I wasn't on Twitter, so I didn't see it. But friends of mine did see it, and it upset them, you know. And I had people who are professionally associated with me because I'm a book illustrator. They were attacked by Twitter mobs as well. So, and I know that happens.
Has it calmed down recently? Are things getting better for you?
I am not, well, Thistle, I'm not going to keep my head down, I'm afraid. Now that I've published a book and I've been on social media and I feel it's, as an older woman, I'm 60, I feel that I have got a duty really at my age and after what I've been through, because I'm a domestic violence survivor as well. You know, I've been through a lot, like we all have. And I feel that the older we are, we should have more freedom to stand and speak up, you know, and to say to younger people, look, you know, what you're going through, we all went through. We all went through it. It's not just you. You're not alone. What's happening to you as a teenager, it happened to all of us. We all lived through it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And this ideology today that if you feel uncomfortable in your own body, that the way to deal with it is to chop bits off it. Come on. I mean, we lived through all that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was non-conforming as a child and a teenager. And this was part of my motivation for doing the original cartoon. I felt very strongly on the subject. Once I started reading a little bit about it, I felt very strongly, because I felt like this. I felt like this as a child and a teenager as well. And I told the Morning Star, but they didn't print my explanation of the cartoon, which is a shame, you know. But I'm determined to talk about it now because it is my right. It's my right to reply to talk about this, and it is a difficult thing to talk about. It is, but I see a lot of young women on YouTube, you know, who have these detransitioners, and they've been coerced into, and how much they regret it a few years later. And if only somebody could have sat down and talked to them when they were sort of 12, 13, when they had their first period, you know, and they started finding it so difficult socially. If only people could have sat down and talked to them then.
The right,
said, look,
obviously, because
yeah.
there's the trans cult is a real thing, and they will speak the words the youth need to hear to believe that they're born in the wrong body and need these, you know.
And the thing is, this when I was growing up was way before the internet, was before mobile phones. I didn't have anybody telling me this. I believed before the age of about 11 that I was a boy. I did believe it. My parents had a lot to do with it. My father used to take me and my brother to the same barbers, have short back and sides, both of us. I was just in boys' clothes all the way through primary school. And that was just all accepted. My father used to take me to sort of football instead of my brother, because he thought my brother was a sissy, you know. And so he would take me instead,
but
as if I was the boy.
Literally a boy. You did not think you were literally a boy.
I did. I believed I was going to grow up and join the army and be 6 foot tall and have a beard. I believed it, yeah. I really believed it. And that was long before the internet. Now, the only kind of media I had that might have given me these ideas was American comics. I read lots of American comics because being an artist, you know, I obviously had a massive interest in comics. It could be that influenced me, but I really did believe it, and I wasn't told about periods or anything. A lot of parents of my parents' generation didn't tell their kids, didn't tell them, you know. And then when it happens, such a shock, and you think and the idea that this is going to happen every month for the rest of your life, you just don't want to even. You want to blot it out of your mind. Mm-hmm. And we all went through this. Mm-hmm. And long before there was trans ideology around, there were ways of dealing with this. And I mean, I managed to persuade my mother to get the doctor to put me on the pill at the age of like 14, 15, on the grounds that my periods were very uncomfortable. And that's it. That stops your periods, reduces your estrogen. You don't have to think about it anymore. And so this was done before all these new drugs and things come in, but done in a different way, you know?
Yeah, I think there's always been a societal disgust for the female form. Not always. In patriarchal society, we are taught to fear and not really like the female form, and to view it as being closer to the earth and all that's dirty, as opposed to, you know, the enlightened mind.
But you don't know about all that when you're a teenager, but as a teenager,
you just feel
you feel it. But periods are actually very disabling for young girls. They're very disabling. There's all kinds of things you can't do for 1 week a month. You might feel you can't take part in sports, or you can't go to a dance, or you can't mix with your friends.
Though I think that's socialized. I don't think the period is actually. I mean, it depends on the body, right? On the girl. Some girls get incredible cramps, but there are herbs that you can take. There's foods, different ways that those problems could be mitigated if we lived in a woman-loving society. I just kind of believe that our bodies, that there's something wrong with the female body because, you know, we get period cramps or something.
You're quite right. Yes, you're right, of course. But obviously, I was that age at the beginning of the 70s. My parents knew nothing. I mean, they were completely ignorant about anything, really. If all this trans ideology had been around, they might have looked at that and said,
yeah,
well, maybe this will help her, you see.
Oh, and that's happening on a massive scale right now.
It is, because otherwise they're looking at you and thinking, well, why have I got this teenager who's so rebellious and who I can't talk to, and who is just like, you know, opposed to everything? Why? and they don't know how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that affected me as I grew older, and I went into a man's world. I was in the construction industry for 20 years. I mixed much easier with men than I did with women. I made a vow at about the age of 10 never to have children. I never have had children. So I deliberately sought out boyfriends who didn't want children, you know, and unfortunately that led to a few abusive relationships. That's one of the dangers of, you know, because you end up with the men who no other woman has managed to catch, if you know what I mean. You end up with the misfits, unfortunately. So yeah, so my gender nonconformity has affected my whole life. It's affected my whole life. From the jobs I went into, to the people I mixed with, to how I behaved. For example, I was an alcoholic for many, many years because you feel when you mix with men a lot that you feel you have to match them in drinking. So all these things are a result of being gender nonconformist. And people don't realize what a long-term effect it has.
Right.
And I was always mistaken for a man as a teenager. Obviously, I'm only 5 foot nothing, so it's a bit ridiculous. But purely because you wear men's clothes, people think, you know, at first, and it might mistake you for a man or boy, you know. Not anymore. I mean, now I say I'm just a little old lady in a baseball cap, you know. But I didn't want to live when I was a child. I thought of suicide all the time. You know, I mean, what I actually wanted was to be put to sleep and wake up when I was 50. Because I knew that about the age of 50 was when the menopause would come. And it was long past time when anybody would think you might have children. And so I thought, well, wouldn't that be great, you know? And that was a kind of fantasy I had. Well, going through your childhood and your teenage years with ideas like that in your head, it's not good, is it?
No.
And I was a target for bullies at school, and that meant I dropped out of school. So I didn't have any further education. So you see how it affected my entire life, you know? Having said that, I don't want to be so negative about it. It you know, adversity is it helps you, it makes you more creative, probably makes you more, you know, you have more maybe ideas about, well, you're I'm trying to think of, sorry, I'm struggling. You might have to edit this bit out. It makes you more open to different ideas, different ways of life, the types of people you mix with. Nobody is going to sail through life with no problems, nothing, are they? And so instead of sort of lying down under it all and saying, no, that's it, I'm going to kill myself, which lots of teenagers think like that. You have to really think, well, I used to think like that all the time. And then another side of my brain would say, but if you kill yourself, all these bullies have won, haven't they? Because that's what all the bullies want. And that was the thing that kept me going. I thought, no, I shouldn't actually. I should try and find something to do, or some way of life where they can't get at me, and you know, and doesn't work, Thistle. You still fall in with bad people when you get older, you know. But
so glad though that you stuck around, because your cartoon, you put a lot of your cartoons into the book coming. Yeah. Where can people find that book?
Well, it's available online through most of the big retailers. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble in America, Waterstones and Blackwell's in Britain. Yeah, they only need to type the title into the search at the top, and it should come up.
The year we were all canceled.
Yes.
And what is a highlight in that book? Something that is your favorite part of the book that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I cover all the subjects that have been that we've all been talking about this year. You know, J.K. Rowling and I think, I don't know, I hope you'll be able to see this page here, which says, women, a globally oppressed class. And all it is a collection of news clips. And that's, I'm very proud of, because, this is a book in the public domain for the general public. It's not just for like women feminists. So I wanted to put things in there that I probably wouldn't be allowed to put. I've already been, Random House wouldn't allow me in the annual anthology. So I thought, no, I'll publish my own book then.
Yeah.
Which so far the it flew under the radar. They haven't noticed it yet, and feminists have been ordering it, I think.
The holidays are upon us. It sounds like it could be a great holiday gift for the turf in your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hope so. I say for the snowflake in your life. Because it might just, the cartoons might just make somebody stop and think, oh yeah, the absurdity of this.
Mm-hmm.
might actually get through to somebody because it's in cartoon form. So
what I think I heard you say, one of the purposes of the book was so that people who are like us don't feel so alone. But then another purpose of the book is to reach out to people and pique them, have them see that this is an issue in our society, right?
Well, my ideal scenario for the book is for people to be looking at it after eating the Christmas pudding and actually spark some discussions. Oh, what do you think the cartoonist meant by this? Because I have in the past done little talks. I've been up to the local university, and also in my workplace, I've done little talks about cartooning and what is offensiveness. And what I used to do was have some cartoons numbered 1 to 10 on the wall. People could go round and make their own note about, did they find that offensive or not? And then we would talk about it, And of course, in France, this happened to a teacher. He was talking about this in class, and what happened? He got beheaded in the street outside the school, didn't he? A couple of months ago. And so it goes to show how much cartoons have a real effect in the world.
Yeah, it's a powerful medium for sure.
It is.
So I wanted to get back to discussing the idea of free speech a little bit, and how for me at least, there's like some gray area with free speech and women and rights. I'm going to read Renee Gerlich's quote to you and then have you respond. She's a New Zealand radical feminist, and
yes.
She writes, when women are bullied and no platformed for saying that women are female and that it matters, what is taking place is not an attack on free speech. It's an attack on women. When women are silenced and trashed for making actually very plain statements, it does not reflect a growing intolerance for diverse opinions. Believing that biological sex is real is hardly a new and quirky idea. It reflects rising misogyny. Speech is not under attack. Women are under attack. Speech is not being harassed and threatened. Women are being harassed and threatened. Speech is not an oppressed entity. Women are an oppressed sex. And we are oppressed, frankly, by men who have far, far more bullocks to spout about us these days than I care to spend a moment of my life defending in the name of their fake liberal values. So response as an advocate for free speech, but yet at the same time you can see her point, right?
Yeah, I can. Obviously, she's talking specifically really about this issue we're so involved with, where women cannot open their mouths about the trans ideology without somebody attacking them. But no, there are lots of other issues as well. There are other issues, racism, Islamophobia. There are other issues that are involved in free speech, which people also get attacked over. So So yeah, she's talking about a specific area of free speech.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, by saying that I support free speech, I'm not saying everybody should be able to say, I mean, all these death threats and things people get on Twitter, that's not free speech. That is criminal activity.
Okay, well, good. I mean, yeah, there needs to be a distinction made, because pornography, really, like violent porn, I consider that hate speech, not free speech, you know, but
Exactly, yeah. And Pornhub has just been forced.
who
Pornhub has just,
distinction?
yeah.
Because they say what we're saying is hate speech. They say us calling men male is hate speech. And so who gets to decide what's hate speech?
Well, at the moment, it seems to be these tech giants, doesn't it? And the people who run them. Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and all of these, you know, it seems to be they that decide at the moment, because the politicians seem to have bailed out in many countries. They seem to have bailed out of this issue. They seem to be just taking the path of least resistance. And you know, as I said, we are luckier in the UK that we've got some very strong female politicians. I must mention Baroness Emma Nicholson, who I've also had chats with, and you know, people like her, and of course J.K. Rowling she really lit a torch for this. She lit a torch, and women have responded to it all over the world. Defendfeminists.net. I have seen other things they've done, and New Zealand and Australia, they've got lots going on there that, you know, it's almost like, come on, you know. We've the Anglosphere, we've got women all over the Anglosphere, we've got to pull together, we've got to support one another in these countries, we've got to, because we need to fight for women in countries where they're under oppression, real oppression.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, trans activists, I haven't seen a single trans activist say, I'm campaigning against FGM. I haven't seen a single one. I don't know if you have, but I haven't. No, in
fact, and I hesitate to bring it up because I don't have it right in front of me, but I recall that there were some trans activists that were protesting a bill that was going to protect girls from FGM. And they were opposed to it because it didn't allow for bodily autonomy and making choices about what you do to your body or whatever.
Well, you see, why should what is essentially a religion have an exemption under criminal law? FGM is actually illegal in Britain. So any doctor who actually performed that sort of surgery on a young girl or a young woman is breaking the law technically. So of course trans activists are gonna they're gonna support FGM, aren't they? They're not gonna be against it, are they?
That's what I'm saying. I don't have the report right in front of me, but I do recall that coming across my desk, reading about some trans activists opposing was going to protect girls and women from FGM. So anyway, what a gruesome society we've become recently. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to our WLRN listeners who are largely lesbians and radical feminists, and largely American lesbian?
Well, I would like to say, don't lose hope. Don't lose hope, because, you know, we're campaigning here in the UK, but we're campaigning for you guys as well, because your lawmakers will look at the legislation that we're passing here and the protections for women that we're making sure, you know, are still in place here, and they will be looking at it, because British law was exported all over the world. You know, British law is actually the foundation of the you know, the American Republic, and also Australia and all these other countries. British law was exported everywhere. So your lawmakers will be looking to what happens here, and hopefully they will realise. I mean, we've got a major political party in this country, the Labour Party, that went down the rabbit hole of self you know, identitarian politics and trans ideology, and look what happened to them. They haven't won a general election for the last 5 or 6 general elections. They are just falling apart because the ordinary people, the ordinary voters, know that this is all. Well, it's an insult to everybody's intelligence, isn't it?
It is. It's nonsense. It's harmful nonsense. Yes. Yeah. I like that description, an insult to everyone's intelligence, for sure.
It is. And you can't lump all like working class voters together and say, oh, they're so thick, they don't understand. Women, parents, they understand this issue only too well. They can see the harm. They can see the nonsense that's being told to their children in school.
Mm-hmm. Well, to the turning tide, may it be global. And
I think we have to rely on that, Thistle. We have to rely on the intelligence of the ordinary voter, you know.
Well, yes, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because I definitely have had lively discussions about that, about can we trust the common ordinary, voter. And I think with education and with open dialogue and discussion and true free speech that's about freedom of expression, yes, people can be educated and we can make, I believe in democracy. I believe.
Yeah, good. If you don't mind me saying so, that's awfully elitist, that point of view, isn't it? Because look at me, I didn't go to university or anything like that. I didn't go, people would look at me and say I was... I
didn't mean academic education. I meant popular education. I mean having spaces like Spinster where we can have dialogue and real discussion with amongst ourselves. And
that's right.
Panel discussions in alternative media, our own experts. But no, I think you don't have to go to school and get a piece of paper to be educated. You can... we can educate each other.
But that's right. Yeah, that's right. Well, I'm hoping to stick up for women artists, and especially in the political cartoon area. There's very few of us, and there should be more,
Yeah. Well, hopefully, as our movement grows, we're going to find each other more and more, and we're going to build a community of artists and intellectuals.
Well, what would be really great, Thistle, would be some woman they would need a bit of money behind them, but a national newspaper that was women-owned, women-run, and women-centered. Because not everybody lives on the internet. Vast numbers of ordinary people do not live on the internet. People forget that to have the internet at all, you have to pay a monthly fee. So it is out of reach of some people, and also they might work too hard. They might be holding down 2 or 3 jobs, looking after children. Not everybody lives on the internet. This is where the power of the press. This is where you need something like. That's just a dream I've got, that some rich woman might set up a national newspaper.
Maybe J.K. Rowling could set.
Wouldn't that be wonderful? Wouldn't that be great?
That would be fantastic.
It would be, yeah. I will volunteer to be their cartoonist.
Okay, well, thank you so much for granting WLRN with this interview today, Stella.
Oh, it's been great. It's been really, really great, Thistle. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to my interview with political cartoonist Stella Perrett. What better gift for that snowflake in your life, or the feminist, than Ms. Perrett's collection of cartoons called 2020, the year we were all canceled. You can get your copy of her book by clicking on the links provided in the post where you found this interview. We hope you will consider supporting Stella's independent work, as she is a kindred spirit in our feminist fight to let our light shine out in the darkness this season. Happy holidays to all of our WLRN listeners. See you next year for our show dedicated to the highlights of the global feminist movement in 2020. Joey Bright of Can I Get a Witness will be my guest on that show, so stay tuned. This is Thistle Pedersen signing off for now. Wishing you and yours a bright and joyful holiday season.